I've got to ask a question. This is something which is quite close to me at the moment now, and I've got to ask a question. So, in February, just after Valentine's Day, Brentford decided to stop taking the knee. Okay. Now, as far as I'm concerned, like I said to you, the knee is a symbol. I don't even know to go in the history for you, but it's a symbol. Black oppression is going around, and the abuse that players have been getting, so many different reasons. People around the world decided to just to rally and get behind a cause, and the knee was a symbol of that cause. And I have to admit, I was massively proud when our team decided to do that back in the last season. I thought it was a great symbol. We were one of the first teams to do it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And the reason why is, again, me as a black football fan used to get loads of grief. Used to get kicked around the place by my own fans, Brentford fans, by opposition fans, things that I used to go through for school. And you never, basically, people wouldn't have your back, because if they didn't have your back, if they had your back, they'd probably get beaten as well. So you find yourself on your own a lot. And then football players out there, again, 80s, 90s, they kind of put their head down, because if they said anything or did anything, they get loads of grief as well. So it's better for them to put their head down. But what you've got also recently is that players have decided to actually, I've had enough of this, so they're starting to speak up against it. And then you've had the worldwide things that are happening, which is just driven black people and people who support out in the streets to say, actually, we've had enough of this, we're not having it anymore. And it comes under the banner, they call it Black Lives Matter, but it could be called Pink Fish Matter as well. It doesn't really matter. Irrelevant. So they've gone out there and they've done this, and it's fantastic, and the club are behind it. But then all of a sudden, they stopped doing it. There was a reason why they stopped doing it, and I felt, hold on a second, a little bit disappointed here, but what was more disappointing is that nothing was put in its place. So it's left a void, and now what's happened is that the media have jumped on it as Brentford being the first team not to take the knee in the Premier League. And for me, that's a bit of a problem, because all my mates are now coming to me and goes, what's this all about, Bill? And I feel slightly embarrassed. I'm not saying the club's not going to go to the club, because I know it's not wrong, but it might be just logistically something has been missing here a little bit. But this is something that we need to fix. And my daughter, who's sitting over there, she's been sitting over the corner for ages, and she's the one that said to me, Daddy, why have Brentford stopped taking the knee? And I sort of fumbled through, because things aren't quite, it doesn't really, and it's run out. And she just said, it's stupid. Surely it's better to do something than nothing. That's a 12-year-old girl that said that. So what I'm just coming back to you, and I know this is not a football thing, but it's quite an important thing, I think this is, how did it start? Why did it start? Where did it come from? And what's the next phase? Because we need to be right in there.
Okay, so where did it start? So I think the whole thing started in a quite organic fashion. It wasn't orchestrated by, I'm only talking within the four walls of Brentford here. It wasn't orchestrated by myself or the board or anyone like that. It was the players took that decision. They wanted to participate in that and show that it was an important cause for them. They took that decision and we supported them. And then fast forward to, I think you said it was February time. Again, it was they that decided that they were not sure that was now having any sort of impact. And the question mark is, and this is something for us to be very aware of, is at what point do players doing that give us the opportunity to go, sure, we're doing our bit. Is that enough for a football club to be doing it, or do we need to do more? So we've appointed someone called Kevin Coleman, who works in the office, in the off-field staff, and he came from the FA, and he is massive in that area, and he's got a whole myriad of things that he wants to actually achieve, but not going to tell the players what Brentford's going to do, but actually working with the players to say, how do you want to work with all of us to replace that taking the knee, and actually do some meaningful work, rather than do something which perhaps some of you have felt now is papering over the cracks, or we can just keep doing this forever and now the whole problem goes away, which we know it doesn't. You need to replace it with some meaningful gestures. So that work's ongoing at the minute. Obviously, it was a little bit tricky to get everyone bought into different things. I think it was a tricky season to do some meaningful work, partly because of the fixture programme, partly because of obviously COVID, and we can't get out and about. And I think he wants to get the players out and about and actually, educating and making a difference long term. So I think you'll see more and more of that sort of unroll over the next period. Now, one of the things that's happening tomorrow is the Premier League having their AGM, and I know that the taking the issue is on the agenda, and I know that will be asked that question of what's our intention. And I think it's really important that we sit with the players again at some point and say, How do you see it now? Is there any change in perspective? Do you still feel the same about it? You know, because ultimately this is something that they chose to stop, and we're not imposing anything on that. And I don't want to preempt that conversation and say that they're going to do this or they're not going to do this, and we're going to be the only club that doesn't do it, or the only club that does it. What I do know is it won't be right for us to say we're not going to do it, and as you say, we're going to do nothing else. You know, we really need to fill that void. Because see, if we're the only club not doing it, we'll come into some scrutiny to say, well, go on, and what are you doing it? What are you doing about it? But I'm pretty confident that with Kevin and others, we've got a good team there in place to start actually making an impact in this area. And we've also set that challenge from the top down of the club to actually, you know, really address that issue. One question I'd have for the Premier League, if I was at the Premier League AGM, which I'm not, is you know, when I look at taking the knee, is what has to happen for that to stop? So maybe that's a question for you. I've got a question for you. What do you think needs to happen for that now, which should be sort of seen to have achieved something and actually delivered on it, or is it going to continue forever and not make any strides? What the strides? What's the exit plan from that? So I'm not quite sure what that is. So that's a question for you. I'll put that back in.
And again, we can go on all night about this. I mean, it's one of my passions, and maybe this is a conversation we have for another time. I mean, obviously, the exit plan is that we can go to football matches and no players are going to get racially abused. And I'm not going to worry about going to the England game like I went to last Sunday and have a guy behind me booing, and I have to turn around to him and have a word with him, you know, very politely, and say to him, "You're making me feel very uncomfortable." Okay, because I don't want that situation, and you know, having fans that are doing, you know, particular things which, you know, will make me feel uncomfortable with my daughter in the house here as well. I want her to come to a game and feel. So that's what the end plan has to be, and you know, that at the end of the day, I think that for a start, fans can do a lot more. And we had a lot of conversations here where basically it's interesting when I actually turned around to the fan and I said, "You're making me feel uncomfortable," and I had lots of words with him. And it was only at that moment that everyone around me actually said to him, "Hey, stop, mate! You've got to stop." And everyone around him ripped him on. And all of a sudden he realised that he wasn't, you know, in a majority. He was actually in a minority of one, and maybe there was other booing and going elsewhere. And all the people around him started talking to him. And it's at that moment that everyone goes, "Get away from me! You're not with me. Get away! You're not interested." And he had to leave and walk and just go away from the area. And another Asian fan actually came up to me and said, "Listen, you know, at the time, don't do this. Just put your head down." And I said to him, "I'm not doing it anymore. I'm not being quiet anymore. I'm not having this. I have to say something." So what's happened is that there's a few things here. The politics side of thing, which they've tied this in with, is a load of nonsense. This is all about racism, and this is all about a cause. And people, you know, me, my daughter, my friends, will go out there and we'll say, this is the cause, and the symbol for the cause is taking the knee, which was done by Martin Luther King in 1965 at Salem. If anyone do a little bit of history, go and read a book if you don't know about it. Salem, okay, there's a movie about it, and it was about oppression, and it's about voting rights in America, and the police were beating people, and then when they shut them down, Martin Luther King took the knee. 1965. What has that got to do with Marxism? It's got absolutely nothing. There's absolute nonsense excuses. People should actually turn around and actually look at the reasons why we have done it, why we have to go forward and do this, and why the players are doing it. And rather than just making up their excuses because they don't like that they're doing it, I think they should have a little bit more empathy for the reasons why they are and support it. And that's all I'm going to say for it now.